There we go.
So, Wendy Ann, I want you to feel the major hug that's coming your way from this amazing group of people. I consider this a conversation among mastery and masters in the room, and it has been for the past 2 days. It's been not really surprising to me, but it has been such a welcome forum that all the things we've learned, particularly the First Nation voices from across the world, were so present and grounding us in what is real, particularly as we move beyond our five physical senses and what it is to be humanity into the world of spirit, which is what's beyond that. And you have created this amazing forum for us to be a collection of lights that go forward from here. And so keep going. I know what it's like to start a profession or to start a magazine or to start anything. And it's heavy lifting. And I
Mhm.
think you're hitting the point where there is going to be more of a conversation about this. For all of you who have worked in the ethics space to bring to light all of the conversations we've had in the past 2 days, thank you. Thank you. We have to grow our edges as a profession. And you are feeding a body of work that was called out of us as this is our turn to serve the universe, to serve the world that we live in, and to welcome humanity back into a state of remembering who we are. And it is time beyond time for that. So I want to say just thanks to all of you for being in the conversation. You can read a little bit about me whenever you're ready. I want to tell you a story that started on this plane, a jet, from Kennedy Airport in 2001, May 16th, to go to the first ever European coaching conference in Grindelwald, Switzerland. So we were flying from Kennedy to Zurich. And I was in business class. I paid for it myself because at that point, all of our efforts, all of our efforts as members of the board, and I was a founding member of the board, so this was my fifth, going into my sixth year, was my sixth year of serving on the board and helping this profession kind of get wings. Um, but as I as the doors closed, this little lady in a red raincoat with a tote bag walked in a designer tote bag, walked into the room, and she sat next to me, the last seat on the plane. And as she was struggling with her technology, as we were getting ready to taxi and then take off, we started a conversation. And I said, "Hello, my name is DJ. What is your name and what takes you to Zurich tonight?" And she said, "Hello, my name is Sonia, and I'm originally from Switzerland. And I'm going to celebrate my 85th birthday with my sisters who are turning 92 and 94." And I said, "That's beautiful. How rich an experience. Tell me what's the best part about turning 85?" And she said, "The best part about turning 85 is that I don't care what people think of me anymore. I do the work I want to do. I go to NYU every day and I hold babies whose mothers can't care for them because they are addicted to crack." She said, "I am still learning." And she pulled out a Microsoft Network certificate and showed me that she was still learning at 85 years old. "I'm going to show this to my sisters." So we continued the conversation over red wine and chocolate, watched the movie Chocolate, which had just come out, and continued our dialogue. She looked at me and said, "So what takes you to Zurich?" And I said, "I'm going to Grindelwald, Switzerland. I am going to help host this first coaching conference outside of the North American borders that we have been living in for the first years." And she said, "What is this thing you call coaching?" I gave her my best ICF definition, Magda, at the time. And she looked at me and said, very sincerely, "Oh, coaching is too harsh a word for what you do. What you do is guide people to their inner wisdom before they're 85 years old." So I told that story on a stage with 5 interpreters in different languages and 17 interpretations total. some in booths with headsets. And so I had to tell it in phrases. And what I discovered in that room in telling the story is that as people were really trying to see what I was saying or hear what I was saying, that when they heard it in their language, the lights came on. And in that moment, I realized you speak to the culture before you speak to the human being in it. And that has served me. I will tell you that I told that story. And by the way, that story was used in, I think, 7 books that I know of that I helped endorse, but about 17 books use that story in the opening of what it is to coach. And when I told the story at Conversations Among Masters, which was a group that was started to bring master coaches together, that first group of us who had gone through the rigor of developing notebooks with 2,500 hours of, what we had done and who we were and why we should be the people who would look at everybody else's application and start reviewing them for PCC, which was the only other credential at the time until we hit Europe and they needed something for an entry level so that they could start doing this in their Jobs Plus role. And we came up with the ACC in that conference. So I will tell you that, going through this process, I talked with the Conversations Among Masters group and a gentleman in the back of the room who was a self-professed mystic. Label Braun is his name. He was also an organizational effectiveness PhD. He came up and tapped me on the shoulder. He said, DJ, I am vibrating. And I said, why? He said, you have no idea who you rode on the plane with, do you? I said, well, her name was Sonia. He said, DJ. And he grabbed me by the shoulders and he said, Sonia is a derivative of Sophia. You rode on this plane with the goddess of wisdom. She gave you a message. 85, 92, and 94 in numerology will translate to this is the time in service to humanity for us to bring the intellect and the spirit together, for us to focus on humanitarianism, for us to bring about awareness. He said, she gave you a message. You tell everybody you can this story. And the 92 is taking you into a spiritual reckoning, a time that humanity's purpose on the planet will be revealed. And 94 comes back to an angel number. And that number is around enlightenment. It is the pathway. So as you might imagine, when I tell this story, I bridge 2 worlds and I live in the space where 2 worlds touch. So do you. I've seen it in the conversations for the past 2 days, but I see it in the coaching community. We're not making this up. This is our time to serve the universe. So I want to move you from Sonia's story as a way of having you hold on to the fact that you have been called into this profession or then this industry to help frame it as a profession for all that will come after this. I feel very, very strongly about that based on my experiences around the world. A quick side note, I also was a part of the Japanese organization that framed what coaching would be in Japan in the fall in November of 2000, when Keiko Hirano-san, who served on our board, and later, and others went to the government. The government only recognizes one professional body in each of the countries or each of the areas in Asia, and this one in Japan, the ICF owned from the beginning. So I was there to toast that. And I had spoken all over the country for about 10 days and taught all over the country and through interpreters. And I had a lovely interpreter whose name was John. And John, not his real name, but the name that he wanted me to use, John said to me after 3 days of teaching, and we were at Narita at Disney World, where It's a Small, Small World was playing. He came up to me and he said, DJ-san, Sensei, I don't think this word you use at the end of your stories it means what you think it means. Now, Dr. Wayne Dyer had talked with us at this Conversation Among Masters in one of our coaching conferences, and he said, and he's a renowned author, if you don't know who he is, look him up. But Dr. Wayne Dwyer had said to me, when you go to Japan, he said, I end every session with namaste. The light in me sees the light in you. And I thought, well, I'm a yogi. I can use that. So I was saying namaste at the end of each of my speeches and teachings. And they would smile politely, culture before individual. And then he said to me, DJ, this word you say namaste? I said, yes. He said, it does not mean what you think it means. I said, what does it mean? He said, it means I feel sorry for you. And so after I picked myself up, I started my next speech. It is a small, small world. It was still playing in the room. And I started it with that story that we're looking for right language and that coaching has given us a language that goes beyond politics and beyond religion in ways that help us connect as human beings. And so that's my first story. And I want to move from that into a second story. So I have had the privilege of working in organizations since we started this. And I will tell you that my husband and I built our business, the Pyramid Resource Group, in a quantum physics model, quantum change model. I came out of broadcasting with an 18-year career. And so I had built major networks, sports networks, and other things. And coming into this space, to the coaching space, I really wanted a lifestyle. I had two babies, and I was, becoming a mom, and that was requiring a lot of energy. And I had help, with this whole notion of thinking about what coaching could be. I was enrolled as student 68 in the program I took at the time, and so it was still so early. And we hired a coach with three other couples who were building businesses, different kinds of business, from construction to other consulting. And by the time we finished writing our business plan, it was obsolete. And so we moved into claiming what we wanted out of strategic intention and interconnectivity, which are the first two pieces of quantum change. And we built platforms on that. And we got hired right away by GSK Pharmaceuticals, where we worked for 17 years. And then that led to a lot of other things. GTE, we did the first research that went into the portal at the ICF. And I was doing that alongside helping build the board, facilitate the merger of several organizations into one body called the ICF. And not doing that alone, but my role was to step into leadership over and over and over again. And so as I was translating between the organizations that we were serving as a collection of coaches and the ICF, the founding of ICF, what happened is I started to see things almost in cartoon form because of the language people used around me in major organizations. So fast forward, we built a board, I'm off the board, I did my time and I loved it. And I met human beings around the world who gave me hope that we can make the change that we want to see. But in one organization, the last big 3-year initiative we were charged with helping merge 5 companies into one change management process. And I used this quantum idea. And it was really to set an intention for what they wanted to accomplish in 90 days, to night change agents and teach them coaching skills, to run listening sessions, and to have them change the conversation from I can't and they versus me, or we versus them, into we can. We can do whatever we set our minds to do. I'm going to tell you the bottom line of that was to raise engagement by 30 points in a year, to coach 60 teams simultaneously. But what I want you to see is this. As I listen to these organizational leaders standing around me, one thing became really clear is that they didn't think people were really capable of change. They actually had different badges that they wore. This is also a piece of research that's in the ICF portal and lives on our website. But what happened is I inverted the William Bridges change curve and the Kubler-Ross, curve of sort of life cycle emotions. And this is what I got. When we are faced with chaos and challenges and change, what happens is we have a different level of response and receptivity when we are engaged, when we are thriving, when we are moving into joy in our days, then if we're asked to be resilient one more time, if we become nostalgic about the good old days, if we are avoiding conflict instead of engaging in creative conflict, if we are afraid of each other, if we're afraid of anything, afraid of loss, if we are disengaged, if we are disheartened, and that's where a lot of us are now, we are disheartened about what we look out and see. And so our challenge is to change the frame, not only for ourselves, but for those in front of us, because that might be all we can control. So beyond overwhelm, there lives a possibility, a field of possibility. And the leaders were saying things like those knuckle draggers, those millennials, they don't come to work. When I started listening to their language, I just said, well, you can leave them in Zombieland or you can help them zeal out in your organization. But it starts with rapid change. So the whole notion of the quantum change model is this. First, you look at the interconnectivity. You look at how you're responsible as a leader for everything that occurs. The second thing is that you begin to explore what would happen if we just listened to people and ran listening sessions. One change agent with 10 people at a time, each responsible for 100 people until we get the themes of what is challenging and address them with rapid actions, which is the third element. And the fourth element is innovation. So that can happen. It can change the conversation. And we saw that anecdotally, and we saw it in our first test of getting surveys back. And then the leadership started responding to what was most challenging, 3 items at a time, 3 quick changes at a time. And beyond that became a huge, brilliant initiative from 61.4% to 90.4%. So I'm not going to go through a lot of other things about this. I want to take you into a brief guided visualization. If I have a minute, Wendy Ann. And I'll just tell you that Meg Wheatley's books on restoring sanity and who do we choose to be should be required reading for all of you. And hopefully we'll get her to address this group at some time. I'm going to take this down and I want you to just close your eyes for a few minutes. And some of you were tucking in, right? Some of you are entering a different space. But I want to bring the voices of the Aboriginals, of the Indigenous people, of the real people who have graced us with their stories and their insights. I want to read to you from the Hopi Nation, from the elders, and I called to see if I could get permission to publish this some years ago, and they laughed at me. I said, I want to know the Hopi elder who wrote this. They speak as one voice. So as you close your eyes, listen. You have been telling people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell people that this is the hour. And there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where is your water? And as Emil said, where is your corn? Know your garden. It is time to speak your truth. Create your community. Be good to each other. And do not look outside yourself for your leader. Then he clasped his hands together, smiled, and said, this could be a good time. There is a river flowing very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they're being torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push away into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above water. And I say, see who is in there with you. Look around and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in sacred manner. Sorry. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. That is the origin of that quote. Thank you for generating this beautiful community. It has been my sincerest privilege to be with you.
Wow. Thank you, DJ. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
You've been constructing this over 2 days. To keep it in the spirit of what the forum has been. Thank you very much. We are going to now have a celebration, a recognition of this year's 2025 Champions of Courage Changemaker. And I'm just going to navigate some people here to help do this. Where's my mate, Kristen? She's going to take over. And we've got Joel.